You know that feeling when you realize you were never meant to belong? When you look at the people who are supposed to love you and see nothing but indifference. Or worse, resentment. Yeah, that was my childhood. I grew up in a house where love was a currency, and I was always broke. My older sister Camille was the golden child. She could do no wrong, and I could do no right. Our parents adored her, poured everything they had into her education, her hobbies, her dreams. Me, I was a ghost, an afterthought. I think I was an accident, honestly. They never said it outright, but I could feel it in the way they treated me. Like I was an obligation, a burden they had to deal with but didn't want to. Camille, of course, was well aware of her status as the favorite. And she used it. She treated me like a servant, taking whatever she wanted. My clothes, my books, my privacy. And my parents let her. I remember once, I saved up for months to buy a pair of sneakers I had wanted for ages. The second Camille saw them, she laughed. "Those would look better on me," she said. And just like that, they were hers. My parents didn't even blink, but things really hit rock bottom when I turned 16. I had been working small jobs, dog walking, babysitting, yard work, just to afford things for myself. I saved every penny in a little envelope tucked away in my desk drawer. It wasn't much, just around $800, but to me, it was everything. One day, I went to grab the envelope. It was gone. At first I thought I had misplaced it, but deep down, I already knew. Camille. I stormed into her room and there she was, painting her nails, acting like she hadn't just stolen every dime I had worked for. "Where's my money?" I demanded. She barely looked up. "Oh, that? I borrowed it. I'll pay you back." Borrowed. She spent it all. On clothes, on makeup, on whatever she wanted. And my parents? They just shrugged. "She's your sister. You should share." That was when I realized I wasn't just neglected. I was nothing to them, but the worst betrayal was yet to come. I had one thing in my life that made me happy. Ethan, my boyfriend. He was sweet, funny, and for once, I felt like someone actually cared about me. I told him everything. He knew how my family treated me, how much I longed to escape. Then, on the night of my 18th birthday, I walked into my house and saw something that made my blood run cold. Camille, kissing Ethan. I felt my heart shatter, but it wasn't just the betrayal. It was what came after. I screamed at them, demanded an explanation. Ethan just looked guilty. Camille? She smiled. Smiled. Maybe he just realized he deserved better, she said. I turned to my parents, expecting, even hoping, that for once they'd be on my side, but instead they rolled their eyes. "Don't be dramatic," my mom scoffed. "Boys come and go, but your sister will always be family." I was shaking. I had nothing left. Then Camille twisted. "The knife. Oh, and by the way, we're dating now." My parents knew, and they were fine with it. That night I packed my bags. I was done. "Where do you think you're going?" my dad demanded. I met his eyes, my hands trembling with rage. "Anywhere but here." I walked out, not knowing where I was headed. Just knowing I had to leave, and that was the night I made a decision that would change my life forever. I was going to get revenge. I walked out of that house with nothing but a duffel bag and a heart full of rage. It wasn't just anger. It was betrayal, humiliation, and a burning need to prove them wrong. I had spent 18 years being treated like garbage, and I refused to let it continue. I didn't even know where I was going. My best friend, Tasha, was the first person I called. She had seen how my family treated me for years and always told me I deserved better. When she picked up, I could barely get the words out before she interrupted. "Girl, say no more. My place. Now." That night, I sobbed in her arms, and for the first time in years, someone actually comforted me. Not ignored me. Not belittled me. Just cared. But as I lay awake in her guest room, staring at the ceiling, the reality set in. I had nothing. No savings. Camille had stolen them. No home. My parents wouldn't care if I lived or died. And now, no boyfriend. Because she took him, too. I should have been broken. I should have given up. But instead, something inside me snapped. They had taken everything from me, and I was going to make them regret it. The next morning, Tasha helped me come up with a plan. First, I needed money. And fast. "Look," she said, "you're gorgeous. You're smart. and you deserve to be treated like a queen. If your family won't give you the life you deserve, someone else will." That's when she introduced me to the idea of sugar dating. At first I hesitated. Wasn't that just selling myself? But Tasha shook her head. It's mutual. Rich guys want companionship. You want security. It's just business. I had spent my whole life being used. At least this time, I'd be the one in control. So I signed up, and within 2 days, I had a date lined up with a man named Daniel. He was in his late 40s, recently divorced, and, most importantly, filthy rich. He took me to the most expensive restaurant I had ever seen. He was kind, charming, and didn't pressure me into anything. By the end of the night, he handed me an envelope with $3,000 inside. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. Over the next few months, I built my life from the ground up. I stopped taking Daniel's money once I landed a job, but he became a genuine friend. With my new income, I got my own apartment. No more living in someone else's shadow. Then, out of nowhere, karma hit my family like a truck. My mom called me, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Sweetheart, your father lost his job and we're struggling. Your sister's tuition needs to be paid," and I hung up. For years they let me suffer while throwing thousands at Camille. And now that they were in trouble, they wanted my help? No, not this time. I ignored every call, every text. And when I checked social media, I laughed. My dad's company went bankrupt. My mom's boutique shut down. Camille? Her precious boyfriend cheated on her. They were drowning, and I was thriving. But fate wasn't done with me yet. One night I stopped at a gas station after work. I was exhausted, so on a whim, I grabbed a lottery ticket. It was a joke. I had never won anything in my life, so why would this be any different? The next morning, as I made my coffee, I casually checked the numbers. My heart stopped. I won, not just a little. Millions. I dropped the mug, shattering it on the floor. I rechecked the numbers 10 times. I was rich, filthy, ridiculously, life-changingly rich. And suddenly I knew exactly what I was going to do. It was time for the ultimate revenge. I stood in my tiny apartment staring at the winning lottery numbers on my phone, my hands shaking. This couldn't be real. I grabbed the ticket, my mind racing. Was this some kind of prank? Was I imagining things? But no. The numbers matched. Exactly. I had just won $15 million. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My whole life, I had been nothing. A shadow. A servant in my own home. And now? I held more power in my hands than my family had ever dreamed of. And I was going to use every penny of it to make them suffer. Before I could do anything, I had to make sure my family didn't find out. I quit my job immediately, packed up my tiny apartment, and left town without telling anyone where I was going. Except Tasha. She was the only one I trusted. I moved into a luxury penthouse downtown, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows, marble, floors, and a view that made me feel like I was on top of the world. Because now, I was. For months, I lived in complete anonymity. I changed my phone number, blocked my family on social media, and vanished from their lives completely. But I kept tabs on them. Oh, I watched as they struggled. Without my dad's job, their money dried up fast. Camille had to drop out of her precious private school. My mom's business never recovered, and they were drowning in debt. And Ethan? The boy who betrayed me? Camille caught him cheating. Apparently, loyalty wasn't something he believed in. Who would have guessed? They had gone from living in luxury to barely scraping by. But the best part? They had no idea I was behind it. Then, one day, the perfect opportunity fell into my lap. I found out through a mutual friend that my parents were desperately looking for an investor to help them save their house. That's when I got an idea, so deliciously evil, I could barely contain my excitement. I hired a lawyer to approach them under a fake name, pretending to be an anonymous investor interested in their home. He dangled a huge financial offer in front of them, enough to save them from their misery. There was just one condition. They had to sign over every asset they owned, their house, their cars, everything. They jumped at the offer. Desperation makes people stupid. And the second they signed the paperwork, I revealed myself. I still remember the way my mom's face drained of color when she saw me sitting in that lawyer's office. A wicked smile on my lips. This isn't possible, she stammered. Oh, it's very possible, I said, crossing my arms. And legally binding. I slid the papers across the table. Congratulations. You just sold everything you own. To me. They were homeless. Camille was the first to break down. You can't do this. I'm your sister. I leaned forward. Funny. You didn't care about being my sister when you stole my money, took my boyfriend, and let our parents treat me like trash. My dad turned red. You think this makes you better than us? I laughed. Oh no, I know it does. They begged, pleaded, even cried. But I felt nothing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the helpless one. I was the one in control. I stood up, grabbing my purse. You have 24 hours to leave the house. After that, I'm having it demolished. My mother screamed. You can't do this to us. Oh, but I can. I smirked. And I already did. Then I walked out, never looking back. As I stepped outside, the sun hit my face, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. They had taken everything from me. And now, I had taken it all back, but the best part? I wasn't even done yet. I stepped out of the lawyer's office and took a deep breath. The air smelled different, like victory. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one suffering. I was the one pulling the strings. But I wasn't finished yet. Taking their home. And money? That was just the beginning. I wanted to ruin them. Publicly. And I had the perfect plan. Camille had nothing left. No money, no school, no boyfriend. She was desperate, so, when she got an exclusive job offer from a high-end fashions company, she jumped at the opportunity. The interview was held at a 5-star hotel, and she was told to dress to impress. She arrived in her last designer outfit, expecting to charm her way into a glamorous new life. But when she walked into the interview room, she didn't find a hiring manager. She found me. Her face went pale. You. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my expensive coffee. Surprise? Her hands curled into fists. What is this? I smiled. Oh, just a little reminder of how things work now. You wanted to be the queen? Well, now you're just another broke nobody. She swallowed hard. You set me up. I tilted my head. You mean like how you stole my boyfriend? Or how you took my money and let mom and dad treat me like dirt? I leaned in. Yeah, I set you up, and I enjoyed every second of it. Her jaw clenched. You're disgusting, I laughed. You're broke. She stormed out, humiliated. And I just sat back and enjoyed every second. My parents had built their entire reputation on being successful entrepreneurs. Even when they lost everything, they refused to admit it. They begged friends for loans, told sob stories about being scammed, and acted like they were victims. So, I made sure the truth came out. I leaked their financial records online, anonymously, of course. Every debt, every foreclosure, every desperate loan they had begged for. The town ate it up. Their so-called friends abandoned them. My mom's old social circle mocked her behind her back. My dad's former colleagues laughed at him, and then, the cherry on top? I bought their house just to demolish it. I made sure it was publicized. Photos, videos, everything. People stood outside, watching as a bulldozer tore down the place where I had suffered for 18 years. And I made sure my parents saw it happen. They begged me to stop, cried, screamed. But I just stood there, arms crossed, smiling. You did this to yourself, I told them. Consider it karma. By now, Camille had become the town joke. Everyone knew how she had stolen my boyfriend, only for him to cheat on her. But I wanted to make sure she never forgot, so I paid Ethan a visit. He was working a dead-end job at a gas station, looking as pathetic as ever. The second he saw me, his eyes widened. Hey, wow, you look amazing. I smiled sweetly. Thanks. I just came to thank you. He frowned. For what? For cheating on Camille, I said, voice dripping with amusement. You really saved me from wasting more time on trash. His face turned red. Oh, and by the way, I slid a thick wad of cash across the counter. What's this? He asked. A little reward, I said. Because you humiliating Camille? Best thing you've ever done. Then I walked out, leaving him sitting there, speechless. A month later, my family was completely ruined. Camille was a nobody. No school, no job, no money. My parents were living in a crummy apartment, barely making ends meet. And me, I was on top of the world. Then one day, I got a text from an unknown number. "Mom, we're sorry, please come back." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I blocked the number. They never deserved me, and now I was finally free. Blocking my mother's number should have felt like the end of this story. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. They still had one last lesson to learn, and I was going to be the one to teach it. I had ruined Camille's life, but I knew her. She was still clinging to hope, hoping that someone would save her, that she'd somehow bounce back like she always did, so I gave her one final test. I sent her a message from an anonymous number. "Meet me at the Royal Lounge, 8 p.m. I have a job opportunity for you." She had no idea it was me. She just saw "job opportunity" and came running. At exactly 8 p.m., Camille walked into the exclusive 5-star restaurant, dressed in her last decent outfit. Makeup carefully done. Desperate to impress. She had no idea I was already sitting at a private table in the back, watching her. A waiter approached her with a note. She read it, then froze. It said, "No job. Just wanted to see how desperate you were." From across the room I saw her face twist in humiliation. She looked around wildly, realizing people were watching her. Whispers spread through the crowd. Her face turned, beet red. Then she ran out. And I just sat there, sipping my champagne, savoring the moment. Ruining Camille had been fun. But my parents? They needed something bigger. They had spent their entire lives pretending, acting like they were wealthy, powerful, untouchable. Even after losing everything, they still tried to save face, so I took that away too. I hired a private investigator to dig into their financial situation. The results? Even worse than I expected. Not only were they in debt, but my father had also tried to scam people to recover his money, so I leaked the evidence. I sent it to every local news station, every social media page, and even his old business partners. By the next morning, my father's name was plastered all over the internet. Disgraced. Businessman caught in fraud scandal, and my mother? The once high society woman? She was laughed out of every social circle. By the time they realized what happened, it was too late. Their friends abandoned them. Their reputation was destroyed. They were officially nothing. And me, I was, finally at peace. Weeks passed. My parents were desperate. Camille had nowhere to go. They had hit rock bottom, and they knew it. Then one day, I got one final message. It was from my mother. A different number this time, probably borrowed since she couldn't afford her own phone anymore. Her message was short. "Please, we're sorry. Just talk to us." I stared at the screen. For a moment I considered it. A tiny part of me, the child who once begged for their love, wondered if I should forgive them. But then I remembered. I remembered every night I went to bed hungry while they took Camille to fancy restaurants. I remembered the time my mother laughed when Camille stole my boyfriend. I remembered the way my father looked through me like I didn't even exist. And I realized I owed them nothing, so I did the only thing left to do. I deleted the message. Then I went back to living my best life, because for the first time ever, I had won. I thought blocking my mother's message was the final step in my revenge. I thought I had won. But life, it had one last surprise waiting for me. A month passed. I had moved on, traveling, shopping, enjoying the freedom that came with having millions in my bank account. Then, one afternoon, as I was sipping an iced coffee on my penthouse balcony, my assistant walked in holding a letter. "It's from your parents," she said, placing it on the table. I raised an eyebrow. I had blocked every number, deleted every message, and yet somehow they had managed to reach me. Curious, I opened it, and when I read the first few lines, I laughed. It was the most pathetic thing I had ever seen. My parents were homeless. They had spent every last dollar trying to rebuild their lives, but no one wanted to help them. Their friends had turned their backs, and now they were asking me for money. Not just a little. Everything. They wanted me to buy them a new house, pay off their debts, help Camille get back on her feet. The best part? They had the audacity to say that after everything they did, we were still family. I shook my head, tossing the letter onto the table. Unbelievable. I could have ignored them. I could have tossed the letter in the trash and never thought about them again. But something inside me clicked. I wanted to see how far they'd go, so I sent a message back. "Meet me at the Grand Royal Hotel. 8 p.m. If you're really sorry, prove it. They replied within minutes. We'll be there. That night, I sat at a private table in the most expensive restaurant in town, waiting. At exactly 8 p.m., they walked in. They looked horrible. My father's suit was cheap and wrinkled. My mother's makeup couldn't hide the stress lines on her face. And Camille? She looked like she had aged 10 years in a few months. They spotted me and rushed over, all fake smiles and forced enthusiasm. "Oh, sweetheart," my mother started, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. I wasn't here for a reunion. I was here to watch them squirm. "So," I said, leaning back, "you want my money?" My father cleared his throat. "We just need a little help. Nothing crazy." I tilted my head. "After everything? After the way you treated me?" My mother forced a nervous laugh. "That was so long ago, darling. We're family." "Family," I smirked. "All right. Here's the deal." They leaned in, desperate. "If you want my help," I said slowly, "you'll need to do something first." They nodded eagerly. "Anything." I took out my phone and hit record. "Apologize," I said. "On camera. Admit everything. How you stole from me. How you treated me like garbage. How you ruined my childhood." Their faces dropped, my mother's. Smile vanished. "You can't be serious." I stared at her. "Dead serious." My father clenched his jaw. "We're not going to humiliate ourselves." "Then you get nothing," I interrupted. Camille, the most desperate of all, grabbed my wrist. "Please, just help us." I pulled my hand away. "I did help. I gave you a chance. And you failed." I stood up, throwing a $100 bill on the table. "For your cab ride home," I said with a smirk. Then I walked out, leaving them broken. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than ever. I never heard from them again. My parents? They vanished from society, too ashamed to show their faces. Camille? Last I checked, she was working a minimum wage job, struggling to survive. And me, I was living my best life. And the best part, I never had to lift a finger. Karma took care of everything. They say revenge is best served cold. But for me, it was served. With champagne, luxury, and $1 million view. I was never the problem, they were. And in the end, they destroyed themselves? I just watched. That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought? Or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.